There is a moment I want to tell you about before anything else, before the backstory, before the explanation, before the years of context that brought me to that specific evening. I want to tell you about a Sunday dinner table in November. 16 people. My mother's good china. The smell of roast chicken and something sweet baking in the oven. And my brother Marcus raising his glass and saying, with the specific warmth of someone who has never once questioned whether he deserved to be comfortable, to Mom, who raised one doctor, one lawyer, and one well. At least Rachel keeps the floors clean somewhere. Laughter. Not everyone. But enough. I was sitting at that table. I heard every word. I felt the specific quality of 16 people deciding simultaneously how to react to something, and most of them landing on laughter, because laughter is easier than silence. I picked up my water glass. I smiled. I said, nothing what none of the 16 people at that table knew. What I had been carefully, deliberately, precisely not telling any of them for 3 years was that the woman they were laughing about had built something that would change every single dynamic in that room before the year was out. I had been waiting for the right moment. That dinner told me the moment had arrived. If you're new here, please subscribe right now and drop your country and local time in the comments. I read every single one. Now let me take you all the way back to the beginning, because this story does not start at that dinner table. It starts 22 years before it, in a house in Cincinnati, with 3 children and 2 parents, and the invisible architecture of expectations that shaped everything that came after. My name is Rachel Okafor. I am 38 years old, and I grew up in a family that loved its children the way some families love their children completely, genuinely, and with a specific hierarchy of ambition that nobody ever stated out loud, but that everyone understood perfectly. My older brother, Daniel, was the doctor. He had decided at 11 years old that he was going to be a physician, and he had proceeded toward that goal with the specific, unhesitating determination of someone who has never been given a reason to doubt that the thing they want is available to them. He graduated medical school at 26. He was a cardiologist at 32. He was brilliant and disciplined and genuinely good at his work, and my parents had spent his entire life telling him so, and he had believed them and become exactly what they believed he would. My younger brother Marcus was the lawyer. He had stumbled into law school after an undergraduate degree in political science and 2 years of figuring himself out, and a significant amount of my parents' patience and financial support. He had graduated law school at 28. He had joined a firm. He had made partner at 35, which was later than most at his firm, and which he attributed publicly to the difficulty of the path and privately, I suspected, to the specific comfort of someone who has always known someone would catch him if he fell. And then there was me, Rachel, the middle child, the one who had always been described by teachers and family friends as the most capable of the 3, and who had somehow, in the accounting of the family's expectations, become the least visibly successful. I had gone to university on a full academic scholarship. I had graduated at the top of my class with a degree in biochemistry. I had been accepted to a PhD program at 23. I had withdrawn from that program at 24 for reasons I will explain, and at 27, I had taken a job as a commercial cleaner, not because I had no other options, because the job paid reliably and had the specific schedule flexibility I needed for what I was actually doing. Nobody in my family understood what I was actually doing, because I had decided, for reasons that will become clear, not to tell them. Let me tell you why I withdrew from the PhD program. I withdrew because of my mother, not because she asked me to. Not because of anything she said directly. Because of what I watched happen to her in the spring of my first year of graduate school. My mother's name is Gloria. She was 54 years old that spring. She had been a high school biology teacher for 29 years. She loved her work in the specific, unshowy way of someone who has found the thing they are genuinely meant to do, and has spent their adult life doing it without needing anyone to. Notice, in March of that spring, she was diagnosed with early onset Parkinson's disease. The diagnosis came quietly. The way devastating things often come, not with drama, but with a doctor's careful voice in a small office, and then a drive home in which the world looks exactly the same as it did before, and nothing is the same at all. I was the child she called first. Not Daniel the doctor, though she called him shortly after. Not Marcus, me. She called me from the parking lot of the medical building before she had driven home, and she did not say much. She said, "Rachel, I need you to know something." And I drove to Cincinnati that weekend, and I sat with her, and I understood what the next years were going to require. Daniel was in the middle of his residency. He could offer medical knowledge and emotional support, and genuinely did offer both, as much as his schedule allowed. Marcus was in his second year of law school, and in the specific self-absorption of someone in the middle of something difficult, and did not, I noticed, rearrange much. I withdrew from the PhD program at the end of that semester. I moved back to Cincinnati. I took the cleaning job because it paid enough, required no mental overhead, and gave me the schedule I needed to be present for my mother 3 days a week and to work on the other thing I was doing the remaining days. The other thing. That is what this story is actually about. Let me tell you about the other thing. 2 years before my mother's diagnosis, in my first year of graduate school, I had become involved in a research project that my supervisor had been working on for a decade. The project was in the field of neurodegenerative disease, specifically the development of compounds that might slow the progression of conditions like Parkinson's and Alzheimer's by targeting specific protein aggregations in the brain. I had joined the project as a graduate student. Within 6 months, I had contributed something my supervisor described as the most significant methodological insight the project had received in 5 years. I am not telling you this to seem impressive. I am telling you because it matters to what happened next. When I withdrew from the program, my supervisor was disappointed. He was also, to his credit, understanding. He knew about my mother. He offered me something I had not expected, the ability to continue working on the project independently, informally, from home. With access to the university's research resources through a visiting researcher arrangement that he personally facilitated. The arrangement paid nothing, but it gave me access to everything I needed. For 3 years, I cleaned commercial buildings for days, a week, and spent the remaining 3 days working on a research problem that I believed, with a certainty I had not been able to shake since I first understood it, was solvable. I worked in the spare bedroom of the apartment I rented 20 minutes from my mother's house. I had 2 computers, a second-hand lab analysis setup I had assembled over 2 years, access to the university's databases, and the specific, unhurried focus of someone who has removed every distraction from their life except the one thing that matters. I told no one in my family what I was doing, not because I was secretive by nature, because I had watched my family's reaction to my decision to leave the PhD program, the specific, careful silence that communicated clearly that they had revised their expectations downward, and I had decided that I did not want to manage their hope or their doubt. While I was doing the most important work of my life, I would tell them when I had something to tell. My mother got worse in year 2. Not dramatically, incrementally. The way these things go, small daily losses that accumulate into something significant over time. Her handwriting changed. Her coordination on some days was not what it had been. She managed it with the specific, unsentimental pragmatism of a woman who had taught high school biology for 29 years and understood at a cellular level what was happening in her own nervous system. She never asked me to come back to Cincinnati. I had not told her that was why I came back. She suspected she was too intelligent not to suspect, but she accepted the cover story of the cleaning job and the change of pace without pressing. We had 3 mornings a week together. Coffee at her kitchen table. Sometimes she would tell me about the classroom, about students she still thought about the specific satisfaction of a lesson that had landed exactly right. Sometimes we just sat. We had always been comfortable with silence in a way that the rest of our family was not. She knew I was working on something. She knew it the way she knew most things about me, without being told. Through the quality of my attention when I was present and the quality of my absence when I was not. She said once, on a Tuesday morning in my 2nd year back, Rachel, whatever you are doing in that apartment, keep doing it, I said. I will. She nodded. She poured more coffee. We did not speak about it again directly. In the 3rd year, 6 months before that November dinner, I completed something. I want to be careful about how I describe this, because the specifics are complex, and the full story belongs to science, and not to a dinner table. But I want to give you enough to understand what had been happening in that spare bedroom for 3 years. The compound. I had been developing a modification of an existing class of molecules, combined with a delivery mechanism that my supervisor and I had been refining through the independent arrangement had shown. In computational modeling and in the preliminary cellular work I had been able to do, results that neither of us had fully expected, not a cure. I want to be very clear about that. Medical research does not work in cures announced in spare bedrooms, but a genuinely significant finding. The kind that, when my supervisor reviewed the complete documentation in September of that year, made him sit very still for a long time before he spoke. What he said, when he finally spoke, was, Rachel, this needs to go to the university formally. This needs to be a paper. This needs to be submitted. I said, I knew. This is going to be significant, he said. I said I knew that too. We spent the following 8 weeks preparing the formal submission. My name was on the paper. My supervisor's name was on the paper. The university's research office was involved. There were processes and reviews and the specific, careful machinery of academic science doing what it does when something arrives that it needs to assess. The paper was accepted for publication in a leading journal in November, the same month as that dinner. I had known for 3 weeks that it had been accepted when Marcus raised his glass and said, what he said about the floors. I had been waiting for the right moment. The dinner told me the moment had arrived. Here is what I did. I did not stand up at that table and announce anything. I did not make a scene. I did not respond to Marcus's toast with the dramatic reveal he deserved. I smiled. I raised my water glass. I let the moment pass. Then I went home, and I sent an email to my entire family, my parents, Daniel, Marcus, my aunts and uncles who had been at that dinner, my grandmother, who was 81, and sharp as she had ever been. The email had 1 line and a link. The line said, I thought you might want to read this. The link was to the published paper. My name, first author, in a leading neuroscience journal. The title of the paper included the words Parkinson's, disease progression and novel therapeutic compound. I sent the email at 11:45 on a Sunday night. I went to sleep. My phone started ringing at 6:47 the next morning. Daniel called first. He is a cardiologist. He understood what he was reading. His voice when I answered was a specific quality I had never heard from my older brother before. He said, Rachel? I said, good morning. This paper? He said, this is your work. 3 years of it, I said. Silence. The compound, he said slowly. The delivery mechanism. This is yes, I said. Another silence. Longer. Why did you not tell us? He said, because I did not want to manage your reactions while I was doing the work, I said. And because I wanted to show you something finished, not something I was promising. He was quiet for a very long time. Then he said, in a voice that was trying very hard to be steady, I am so proud of you. I am so, Rachel. I am so sorry. For what Marcus said last night. For all of it. I am so proud of you. I held the phone. I let myself feel that for a moment. Then I said, thank you, Daniel. That means a great deal. Marcus called 40 minutes later. His call was different. He did not start with the paper. He started with, I did not know. I know, I said. Last night, I know, I said again. Rachel, I am Marcus, I said. I am going to stop you. I do not want an apology right now. I want you to sit with what you said last night and what you read this morning. And let the distance between those two things teach you something. Can you do that? A very long pause. Yes, he said quietly. Good, I said. We can talk properly when you are ready, Mother called last. She did not say anything for a long moment when I answered. Then she said, the compound. Yes, I said. You were working on this for me. It was not a question. I had not told her that. Not directly. But she was a biology teacher for 29 years, and she had read the paper and she was my mother. I was working on it because it needed to be worked on, I said carefully. And because the problem was solvable. And because I stopped, because it was you, I said. She did not speak for a long time. When she did, her voice was different from any version of her voice I had heard before. She said, Rachel. My girl, that was all it was. Everything. The months after the papers. Publication were what? You might expect, if you are familiar with how academic science works, and nothing like what you might expect, if you are not. There were conversations with the university about intellectual property and licensing, and the pathways through which research of this kind moves toward clinical development. There were follow-up studies initiated by 2 research groups who had read the paper and wanted to build on it. There was a grant awarded to continue the independent work under a more formal structure. There was a position offered, a real position, funded. At the university, which I accepted, I moved out of the apartment with the spare bedroom and the 2 computers and the second hand lab setup. I kept the lab set up. It had been part of something important, and I was not ready to let it go. My relationship with Marcus changed, not immediately, not dramatically, but genuinely. He called me 3 weeks after our Monday morning conversation. He said he had been sitting with what I had asked him to sit with. He said, I have been thinking about what I said at dinner. Not just that it was unkind. About why I said it. About what it meant that I could look at you and see not you. See a category. See something smaller than what was actually there. I listened. I think I needed you to be smaller, he said. Because the space between us was more comfortable when I thought I understood where we each stood. And you had made yourself invisible, and I had let you be invisible because it was easier. I said, that is the most honest thing you have ever said to me. He said, I am trying. I know, I said. Keep going. He has kept going. We have dinner once a month now. Real dinners. He asks about the research with genuine curiosity that has nothing to do with status. He listens when I explain things. He has started reading about neurodegenerative disease in a way that is clearly not for professional reasons. I think he is trying to understand what I am doing the way he did not try to understand when I was cleaning floors, and he assumed understanding was not necessary. My mother started a new medication protocol 6 months after the paper. Not related to my compound, clinical development takes years, and the work is still in its early stages. But the protocol has helped stabilize what had been a period of progression. She is still teaching, not at the high school. She was invited to give a series of lectures at the university biology, neuroscience, the intersection of the two. She accepted immediately. She sits in the front row at every seminar I give. Every single one. She has never once introduced herself as my mother to the people around her. She sits in the audience like any other attendee, and she listens with the complete, precise attention of someone who spent 30 years teaching other people to pay attention. At the end of a seminar last spring, a colleague introduced himself to her, and she said her name, and he said, "Are you related to Rachel Okafor?" She said, "Yes, she is my daughter." He said, "You must be so proud." She said, "I was always proud. I just had to wait for everyone else to catch up." She told me that story over coffee the following Tuesday morning, with the specific dry precision of someone who knows exactly what they have said and why they have said it. I laughed for a long time. So did she. I think about that Sunday dinner sometimes. Marcus raising his glass. The laughter. The specific quality of being reduced to a punchline in a room full of people who loved me and could not see me. I do not think about it with bitterness anymore. I did for a while. The specific sharp bitterness of someone who has been underestimated by the people, who should have known better. But bitterness requires you to keep looking backward. And I have too much ahead of me to spend much time looking back. What I think about instead is the spare bedroom, the 2 computers, the secondhand lab setup, the 3 mornings a week at my mother's kitchen table, the specific, unhurried focus of someone who has removed every distraction from their life except the one thing that matters. I think about what it meant to choose the invisible work over the visible recognition, to build something real instead of something that looked real, to wait until I had something to show rather than something to promise. I think about my mother saying, "Rachel, my girl." I think about Daniel's voice trying to be steady and not quite managing it. I think about Marcus saying, "I think I needed you to be smaller." And I think this, the people who underestimate you are not always your enemies. Sometimes they are just people who have not yet been given a reason to look more carefully. Give them a reason, not by explaining yourself, not by defending yourself, not by arguing for your worth in a room that has already decided it. Build something, finish something, put it on the table and let it speak in the language that people who have not been listening finally understand. Then raise your water. Glassed on smile. Before you go, I want to ask you something. Have you ever been the invisible one? The one the room looked past? Have you ever built something in silence because you understood that the work mattered more than the announcement? And have you ever sat at a table where someone reduced you to a punchline and known, completely and without doubt, that they had no idea who they were talking to? Drop the word floors in the comments if this story reached something real in you. And if you are new here, subscribe. Every single day, I share a new story about family, about truth, and about the people who built something extraordinary while the room was looking somewhere else. I will see you in the next one. Kayla's Dark Truth.